meeting is being recorded and summarized.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I don't take advantage of that it is the evening and you've decided to come here and learn with us. So I really appreciate that. This training is being hosted by Mentor Maryland DC in partnership with The Y. My name is Renee Angela Mock. I am your trainer for today. I am one of a few master trainers in mentoring practices. And today's topic that we are covering is from our Becoming a Better Mentor resource, which I'll talk a little bit more about if you're not familiar with. But we are reviewing chapter 1, which is all about providing emotional support and empathy. So we'll get a little bit into what that means, but so we just have some context about who Mentor Maryland DC is and why you should care. So Mentor Maryland DC is an affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. Mentor Maryland DC was launched here in 2018 and we expanded into DC in 2021. And our goal and the goal of all of the affiliates of the National Mentoring Partnership is to increase the quality and quantity of mentoring relationships and close what we call the mentoring gap, which is young people who do not have mentors, right? They're falling in this gap. So we want to ensure that all across Maryland and DC and everywhere that there are enough caring adults to get into mentoring relationships with young people, but that also those relationships, those programs that help host those relationships are of the highest quality. So we do that in a lot of different ways, and our partnership with the National Mentoring Partnership gives us a lot of great resources like the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, but they also do research and public campaigns and mentor recruitment and advocacy as well. We were just in Annapolis having an advocacy day a few weeks ago, and we did an advocacy day on Capitol Hill in January. So stay in touch with us if that's something of interest to you. But that's a little bit about us, and this is a little bit about how we do that work. So like I mentioned, a connection with the National Mentoring Partnership, of which they have lots and lots of resources. They have a research board. They host the National Mentoring Summit, which just happened in January, right? They help spearhead January being National Mentoring Month. So we are your kind of local conduit for everything the National Mentoring Partnership does. And then another offering of ours is our no-cost technical assistance. So technical assistance is currently funded through the National Mentoring Resource Center, which allows us, Mentor Maryland DC staff, our expert consultants, to essentially connect with you for your mentoring program and what your mentoring program needs, what kind of program development you're looking for. So whether that's recruitment of mentors, program design, yes, Rodney, we will. Program design, all kinds of things. You can make a request for us and get anywhere from 20 to 50 hours with one of our consultants to work on things. And I'll say as well, when you get these slides, these are all clickable links, so they will take you directly to the resource. So I mentioned mentor recruitment. We manage the regional database of the Mentoring Connector, which is a national database of mentoring programs. So if you are in the Mentoring Connector, you get to highlight and advertise mentoring opportunities. So a prospective mentor can go to the Mentoring Connector and say, I'm looking to mentor, in this zip code for this kind of program, and your program might come up. It's also for young people who are looking to be mentees and get mentors can also look for those opportunities in the Mentoring Connector. So if you're not already in the Mentoring Connector, I encourage you to be in there. Another way that we connect with you all is through trainings like this. You might come to some of our regional roundtables as well, but we aim to get you all the information that you need and want, and hosting these things in partnership with you all from feedback from you all as well. So this was a training that was important for the Y for us to host for you all. And so we're doing that today, and I'm happy to be here with you. And then, of course, promotion of mentoring best practices. So the element of effective practice is an evidence-based, research-based document on how can we ensure that our programs are of the highest quality and set up our best results, which are long, meaningful relationships between mentors and mentees. So there is a new version of the elements of effective practice that just came out, the 5th edition, which is very exciting. And I'll definitely be sharing some more resources about that. And I'll talk about it again actually at the end of the call tonight. And then once your program is established and you've implemented all those best practices, right, we have the National Quality Mentoring System, which is essentially like a program audit or kind of review to see where you are in your program's journey towards quality. and then programs go through that. They do this with one of our, again, our expert consultants, do this kind of review, and then do this, what we call an improvement and innovation plan. How are we going to continue to make our program better and better? So, and then you will be NQMS certified, which is a nationally recognized standard for quality mentoring programs. So again, very exciting. And besides that, as it relates to funding opportunities and starting a program, we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter, where we are always trying to share those opportunities with you all as it relates to regional funding opportunities and the like across Maryland and DC. So yeah, make sure you are subscribed to our newsletter so you never miss out when we are sharing out that information. We also talk about that information a lot at our regional roundtables. So we are on virtually this evening, and I appreciate y'all patience as we are kind of onboarding WebEx as our new platform, which I know not everyone is as used to. So I appreciate your patience with us. So a little bit about what that looks like and getting used to the system. And I encourage you to click around now as we kind of review. So at the bottom, there we go. At the bottom of your screen, you should see your mute, your video. You won't need to share anything. This is where you can raise your hand, where you can add an emoji, and then these three dots will open up more menus for you to kind of click through as needed. So right from here, it'll open opportunity to open apps, which we'll talk about in a little bit, see who else is here, and then open the chat function. So if you're in the chat, drop a 1, let us know that you're here. And then in the chat function as well, there are a few different things you can do in here. There are emojis, you can tag someone, you can add an emoji to someone else's response, and then there is a GIF button as well, which we don't always see everywhere. So if you're a GIF person, get in there and drop your favorite GIF. And then in addition to the WebEx platform, we will be using Slido today, which is totally integrated into WebEx, and you'll see me open that in just a little bit. But we should be able to do it right from the app, but if you need to, you can also go to your browser and open Slido. And when you do, you'll see this joining as a participant, and you'll enter the code, which will be on the screen. And that will open this here where you'll enter your name and passcode to enter our Slido, which are things like surveys and word cloud and all different kinds of things to make this interactive. We do ask for your name in here because we track your participation and your attendance today because we do issue Credly badges as well. So we want to, our digital badging system, which is through Credly, is our proof, right? But you're able to share out that you went to this training, that you were an active participant in this training, and that what you learned, what the objectives were, and what learning you did over the course. So this is, again, what used to be kind of like a certificate, right, that we might hand out in person. We're now doing digital badging. So we want to ensure that everyone who's on the call is active and participating so we can issue you that badge. And again, that badge will be issued within 1 week, probably by next Friday, March 14th. So be on the lookout for the follow-up on this training, the slides, etc., but also a Credly badge for your participation, which we appreciate. I'm not going to get too into our community standards today, but our community standards are about the space that we are holding with each other today, and about that we are open to everyone, but we're also acknowledging the many isms that all of us in some way, shape, or form are facing, in our society right now. We encourage you to share openly and listen openly, to have generous assumptions of each other, no matter what your role is today, to be a host, right? To be host-like when you go into breakout rooms and things, imagine, right, you're really in a room together, right? And be that kind of host. We want you to, in all of our learning spaces, to be challenging, right? Where we can explore where we might feel uncomfortable and have our practices challenged as we learn new things. And of course, we want this to be supportive and educational, and we want you to have fun and be full and present. So we are going to get started with, we could call this an icebreaker, but I would prefer not to do that because icebreakers have different kinds of feelings. So we're going to start with what we're calling an affective opener, and I'm opening this in Slido right now, which you should be able to see on the right side of your screen. So in this affective opener, you will have, I think it's about 8 or 10 multiple choice questions, which I'm going to ask you to submit your answers for now. And see, I can see at the top of the screen that folks are in there. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'll be able to see you all coming in to answer those questions. And then we're going to review our answers to kind of get to know each other. I might ask for a little bit more details from someone, and you can share it if you want. This is participation is up to you. But we do ask that you answer the questions so we can see and get a kind of landscape of who is here, the experiences of the people who are here. And then if we feel the need to discuss more, I'll call on folks to share more. So I'll give you guys another minute or two to submit your answers, and I'll play some music while we do that. So if you're looking to get into the survey, let me pause music here. You can go to slido.com, enter this code to join the survey and this passcode, and you should be able to get in from there. I see that about half of us have voted, so I'll give you all another minute or so. And then if you're struggling to get in, you can share your answers in the chat as we review our group's answers, but I'll give you all another minute or so. Okay, we're going to review our answers. The survey is still live, so you can still submit your answers for those who are just getting in. But let's see, here we are. You were born, our first question, you were born and raised in Maryland or DC. And I see that we are mostly in Maryland or DC, and some folks who are not. If you weren't raised in Maryland or DC, I'd love to hear where you were raised. Feel free to come off mute or feel free to write in the chat. Love to hear where people are from and where they grew up. And we know that we sometimes get folks on these trainings who are actually from out of state. So yeah, let us know where you grew up. We'd love to hear it. Oh, Catherine is from South Texas. Welcome. We're glad you made it all the way out here to Maryland and DC. Oh, Addison is from California. Wow. Welcome. Awesome. Again, these are some of the things that I'll share out after the training as well. Awesome. All right. For everyone, English is your second language? No. For everyone on the call, English is our first language. Most welcome. Hopefully that makes communication tonight easy, right? You have written a letter to someone in the last year. Over half of us said this is actually pretty even split when I've typically participated in this question. There's only been a few of us. For those of you who have written a letter, I'd love to hear about it. If you want to come off mute, who did you write that letter to? Was it in the mail? Was it a digital letter or a card or something else? I'd love to hear a little bit about those who are still out here keeping our postal service at work. I'll let you share your story in the chat and we'll keep moving forward. Again, get to know each other. You like to sing or dance. Wow, a huge, huge lead here. Love to see it. You all are clearly a fun crowd. I appreciate that. I wish we could have been in person so we could have done some singing and dancing. Welcome. You believe popcorn is best made on the stove. Another question where people get a lot of splits. And for those of you, I agree that it is best made on the stove. pro tip, the Whirly Pop is a great, incredible stovetop popcorn maker invention. But if you disagree, I would love to hear what your popcorn preferences are. Catherine says too much work. Fair. Then what would be your preference, Catherine? Oh, thanks, Carlene.
Like the microwave.
Simply the microwave?
Simply the microwave.
I think that's fair. I mean, it is so fast, and there's literally a popcorn button, and we think about what is easier to do. I'd love to hear your preference for microwave brand, though. I feel like that also is feeds this. But yeah, keep the popcorn discussion going in the chat. People are very opinionated, which way looks sir. This next question, you have failed a class. About 2/3 said no, and 1/3 said yes. I haven't been answering these because I can't participate in this live, but I would be a yes as well. And I think this is an interesting question. Again, if you want to share your story, please feel free to come off mute and share. But I think also when we think about maybe the spread of our young people, what their answers might be, right? And how it felt to fail a class and how it might feel for a young person to go through this. But yeah, I would say compared to typical that this, yeah, I think this is about right. When I failed a class, it was high school, and it was because I was not attending the class, which I think is a common reason for failing a class. But yeah, no, feel free to share in the chat if that applies to you. You had a negative relationship with an adult growing up. Ooh, wow. Seeing that we are in the majority here. And I find, at least in my circumstances, that was kind of my motivation for getting into the work. Does that apply to you? Was a negative relationship with an adult? Why you got into the youth development business? Or how does this inform who you are now or how you do your work now? Yeah, Sandy agrees. But yeah, feel free to come off mute or write in the chat. But yeah, I'm not necessarily surprised, but I would hope, right? Again, if we think about doing this poll with our young people, what would this spread be? And what can we do in our work to ensure that when they're doing this poll in 20 years, right, that hopefully that number would be even less. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate everybody's honesty. And then your life has a calling. I would love to hear about some people's callings. Please shout them out, come off mute, put it in the chat. But I'd love to hear that this is such a majority. And for those who don't, I'll say, I think this is a difficult question to answer, right? To say your life has a calling or what is a calling, right? Can be difficult to define sometimes. But yeah, for those of you who feel called, I'd love to hear about that and for you to share for maybe some of us who are in this know. But yeah, feel free to write that in the chat or come off mute to share. Well, thank everybody for sharing. I appreciate us being able to get to know each other through this activity and seeing people's experiences. I hope this more than helped break the ice, right? That again, we think about this idea of having empathy and building connection, that this helped us do that, right? So I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you for participating. And we will have some more interaction coming up through Slido as well. Okay, like I mentioned, we are sourcing all of our information today from the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, strategies to be there for young people. I'm going to actually drop the link in the chat, which this website is always available to you and how you can access the resource. This is the National Mentoring Partnership's first resource that was specifically created for mentors. Typically, mentors work is about connecting with mentoring programs and doing capacity building, but this is a resource that any mentor can find on their own. They can read the chapter, they can watch a short video about the chapter, they can listen to the chapter, which is in like podcast audio form, which is great. But today's we're talking right at the beginning. The first 6 chapters are really about relationship building and foundational parts of relationships. And again, we're covering providing emotional support and empathy. So this was written by Renee Spencer, who is a researcher at Boston University. So thank you, Renee. Each chapter has a different author with a certain expertise towards the topic. So again, Renee was our writer of this chapter, and we appreciate her collaboration to create this. So a little basically a snapshot, right, of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be working to understand our mentees' experiences from their point of view, right? And how that can improve their reception of your support and greaten your impact. So that is something that I hear about a lot, right? This a reticence for a young person to take your help and support. And this is where that key of relationship building is really, really important when we're trying to do that work, right? When we're trying to help. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to get into another poll right now. Let me launch that and go to our next slide. So yeah, in your own words, how would you define empathy? What is your definition of empathy? So you should either see this pop out on the side of your screen, or you can go to slido.com and enter this information here to join the poll. But what is your definition of entering? When you come into this training, what were you thinking the definition of empathy was, and how am I really going to learn today? So let me know in your words, right? How would you define empathy? See y'all typing in there. Thank you. The ability to understand what someone else is feeling, putting yourself in another's shoes. Yeah, right. We always hear about that, walking a mile in someone else's shoes. Ooh, Megan, understanding the feelings of another person. Love that. Carlene wrote in the chat, putting aside your value system or opinion to understand the other. Ooh, that is so good, Carlene. I want us to think about that and hold on to that. And I'll make sure you guys get everybody's suggestions when I send my follow-up. Understanding the feelings of the person, ability to remove all bias and ego and understand someone's perspective. So Rodney and Carlene had a connection there, I feel, in their definitions. Great. Sandy, to understand and be compassionate about others' feelings and life. Right. Understanding a different point of view. So point of view is coming about, right? So think about this in relation to our mentee's point of view. Juliana, being able to relate and understand on a deeper level. Yeah. Right? This goes beyond the surface level, that we're understanding on a deeper level. We're putting ourselves in their shoes. We're looking at somebody else's perspective. Ability to understand and consider another person's feelings. Ooh, and we're seeing, I've never seen this before, some connections, some themes that continue to come up, right? And ability, right? Empathy is a skill, and that's why we're having a training on it, right? Which we'll talk a little bit more about, right? And that we're talking about feelings a lot, the feelings of another person, and the skill of being able to really understand them. That's what I'm kind of seeing in all of your definitions. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. We're gonna get into, right, what does this chapter say about what empathy is and why we should do it? So, to put it simply, empathy is being open to imagining another person's experiences from their point of view, again, which came up a lot in your definitions, and striving to find points of connection. So how can I be connected with this other person to try to understand their point of view? And we do this by presuming that we feel the same, but trying to feel with this person, right? That we don't need to have the same feelings as that person to have empathy for that person. We're trying to feel with them, alongside them, and that we are responsive to them, right? So it's not just that we understand, but our actions and the things we say are responsive to trying to understand their feeling and perspective. So, and then this is what we call the empathy loop, the process of it. So perceiving what others are feelings, processing the information, and being responsive to the other person's experiences. So that is kind of the act of practicing empathy. And it continues to go around and around as feelings and perspective changes and things like that. So what we know about empathy in our contemporary understanding of it is that it is supported by neuroscience, right? It requires thinking and feeling. So it's going beyond just our feelings, which we talked a lot about, but encourages our thinking as well, right? We got to put on our thinking caps when we're trying to consider someone else's point of view. And trying to understand, again, trying to understand that person point of view, connecting with what they're feeling. And the first step of feeling empathy, but you have to go beyond to be responsive to the person's experience, which I think we kind of got to. And again, as it relates to our brains, when we are out here in the world, our brains naturally look for similarities because when we're trying to find points of connection, right? How can I connect to this person? Well, let's go back to our poll, right? We both like the same kind of popcorn. We both grew up in Maryland or DC. We both, right? And things like that. And then what happens is if we encounter somebody who has a different experience with us, when our brain perceives a difference, it becomes more difficult to build that connection. And this is where empathy becomes more of a practice, right? And why we want to expand our capacity for empathy. And we have to do more. And to do that, we have to do more learning and engaging with folks who are different than us. So for all of you who are on this call, I would never say that or assume, right, that nobody here doesn't know anything about empathy or practices empathy. I'm sure that you all are doing that, right? But when we say that this is a skill, that means there's room for us to expand our empathy to improve. And also for those of us who may supervise new mentors or feel nervous about mentoring for the first time, we can encourage them and know that this is a trainable skill. This is a skill we can build on for someone to be a stronger mentor. And that is good. That's great. That's what we want to hear, right? That we can expand our empathy and our relationships. So here we go. So, of course, as you might expect, there are many benefits to empathy, specifically in mentoring relationships. So, our young person getting the emotional support that they need, feeling heard, which I think is another poll that I'd like to ask, right? Did you really feel heard as a young person? It's something that we know, to feel heard, to be known, to be understood, to be respected. That's really, really important in our relationship with young people because often they are not getting these things from people. We saw y'all's responses to, did you have a negative relationship with an adult, right? You can assume that there was some empathy missing in those relationships. And I touched on this. This is a skill that we can learn and practice, which is kind of the best news, right? So what does empathy look like in practice? And that is what we're going to talk about, the kind of elements of practicing empathy. So empathy can be shown in the overall approach you take in a relationship, but also in small everyday exchanges with your mentee, right? It's something that we're practicing in different ways all the time. And being empathic with someone whose experiences may be who are different than us may require more work. And that is frequently true in mentoring, right? In many cases, mentees and mentors have quite different experiences. And even if you identify with your mentee on certain demographics of experiences, or, me and my mentee are growing up in the same neighborhood or something like that, the one experience that you'll never share is being their age right now, right? That is always a difference. So while we may find lots of points of similarities, we have to understand that they are having a different experience than us. And when we do, and there's still that room and that need for empathy and for what we're about to talk about, which is perspective taking. So regardless of whether you are working to connect across similarities or differences, empathy can be distilled down to two main sets of processes: perspective taking and adaptability, which we're talking about perspective taking here first. So again, a lot of you said this in your definition, right? The ability to step outside of your own experiences and take on your mentees or even your mentee's family, right? This has been referred to as decentering, as it requires setting aside one's own values, beliefs, and worldviews, which again, I heard in your definition. You guys are so good. And centering the thoughts and the experiences of the other person, which honestly relates back to what mentoring and why people mentor, right? To center a young person and to make them the focus of the relationship, right? Their well-being and their outcomes. So you can see it's naturally kind of connected to mentoring. So what is a way that we can kind of practice perspective taking? And this is what we call the ABC model, which is to when we are in relationships with someone, We acknowledge our own responses to the other person, right? Which is, right, I'm noticing this person is different than me, or this person is sharing something with me. So we want to have that piece of acknowledgement, right? Breathing deeply to ground ourselves and not let our emotions overtake us. We know that our young people are going through it. We might have young people share something that is personal or might feel scary to us, right? So staying grounded and taking deep breaths, right, to not let our emotions overtake us. And then lastly, to be curious. So when we're doing all this helps us make space for being curious, continuing to be curious about the other person's experiences and trying to understand their point of view. Because what we know for sure about young people is that they are changing and growing. And for us to kind of keep up, right, we need to continue to be curious about their ongoing experiences as they are growing up, as they are developing their identities, so we can continue to try to understand things from their point of view, which might also change, right? Opinions and our experiences inform us and change over time. So I want us to do or to think about a time about when a relationship that you're in, whether it's mentor or mentee or not, doesn't matter, that's fine. But when was the last time when you did use this kind of ABC model, or when you should have, right? Maybe there was a misstep in a relationship and should have done some acknowledgement, breathing, and being curious. So how we're going to do this activity is that I'm going to give you 3 minutes to type your answers in the chat, but do not send them just yet. We're going to send them all at the same time and flood the chat with something we call a waterfall. So I'm going to turn on the music and have you answer this question. Take your time to think about it. But the question, when was the last time you did use the ABC model, or you should have used the ABC model? So I'll give you some time to think. Don't send your answers just yet. And I'll cue us to send it, and we'll send those at 6:40. So I'll give you some time to think and write about that. Take your time, type your answer in the chat, think through it, tell the story, some context, and then we'll all share it at the same time. One more minute. Write your answers to the question on the screen. When was the last time you did, or maybe you should have, used the ABC model in a relationship? Okay, I'm going to count down from 3, and then I'm going to ask you to flood our chat. So 3, 2, 1, send your message. I'll give you guys a minute to look through, and I'll shout out some as well. Oh, wow, Sandy. So the really real experience, right? A young person's upset. This is a time where sometimes we can get overwhelmed, right? But using ABC and being able to talk through it and ending well. Thank you. And BJ used it just West yesterday. Love it. Ronnie said, the last time I spent time with my mentee, it was our second time hanging out, and I practiced being curious. Not to the point of questioning why I was a mentor, but why their parents put them in a photograph. Great. And that being curious, right? We sustain that over time and we continue to be more and more curious. Currently, my teenage respondent keeps everything close for me to get information. I find it best to practice from a curious perspective. It's not quick, good point, but I craft questions correctly and she opens up. Such a good point, Carlene, which I'm going to have us apply in this next activity, right? How are we crafting what we need to know? Because being curious isn't just about asking questions, right? It's about considering the context of the relationship, the rapport you built with a young person. What is a question that can help to kind of build that bridge and not, shut them down? And Carlene is being, right, you're being persistent in a loving way, right? You're being consistent, I should say, by continuing to encourage and ask new questions and things like that. Yeah, y'all are living it, happening this week, right? Great. Catherine, I was asked to support something outside my normal scope of duties. I acknowledged and then said no, right? It took a moment to talk to a supervisor. Nice. Right, and again, this can apply to all of our relationships, right? Workplace relationship, personal relationships. Andrew, I should have used it when I was playing sports with some youth in my program. I got upset in the moment and getting through it to them was difficult. Right, especially right when things get difficult, when a young person's upset, when there are behavioral struggles, this is when this stuff gets hard. And it doesn't mean that we're bad at doing it, right? It means it's more practice for us to get even better at it. So when we are in those tough moments, we can call back to this skill, right? And really apply it to that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Again, this chat log will be saved, so we will be able to review everyone's stories. And again, I thank you for sharing. I'm going to transition to our next activity where we can do a little bit more practice. I just lost control of my screen over here. Okay, so we're going to practice our ABC again, but with a scenario. And here is the scenario. Can I actually ask somebody to read this so I can get our links ready? Our scenario right here. Oh, whoops, hold on. Here we go. Does somebody mind coming off mute and reading our scenario?
Yeah, I can read it.
Thank you.
All right, cool. ABC scenario. You are a mentor to a 15-year-old mentee named Alex, who has been feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork and family responsibilities. Alex has just shared with you that they are struggling to keep up with their assignments and feel like they are letting everyone down.
Yes, thank you. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm about to drop a link in the chat, and we're going to be answering our questions and practicing our ABC in relationship to Alex, who is, again, feeling overwhelmed and struggling. So what I'm going to do, we're going to break into 4 breakout rooms, and I want you to work through the ABC model with your group. So when you open that link, it should take you to this document here. And if you're group 1, you'll write your answers in here, right? So we can all see what we've all come to. So what I'm going to ask you to do as it applies to ABC, and it applies to Alex, who's here on the front page, is how will you acknowledge Alex, right, after he shares this with you? To do some evaluation, right? Do you find pausing to breathe when a mentee has shared something tough with you difficult? So kind of work through that and let us know. And then with the information Alex just shared, What are you curious about? And what might you ask him? Again, thinking back to Carlene and like crafting questions, what might you ask him? What might be your next step there? So the link is in the chat. It looks like some folks are already in there. I'm going to open the breakout rooms now so you all can, pardon me, can work through this together. And those, they should move you there automatically, but if the link pops up, go on ahead and join and keep that link open to work out with your group and write your answers. Is everybody clear on instructions? Drop a 1 in the chat if you're good to go. Okay, cool. I'm going to move us into breakout rooms now. Thank you all for your work in the breakout rooms. It looks like you all had some fruitful conversations. Looks like group 2 and 3 maybe didn't get your notes in, so feel free to still write in your notes. But yeah, I would love to hear any highlights of your conversation, but let's go question by question. So yeah, when it comes to acknowledgement, what did your group kind of conclude about what we could do about Alex in this scenario? Feel free to just come off mute and share.
I'm sorry, Renee, are you asking for us to tell you?
Yeah. What were kind of your conclusions about how we can acknowledge Alex?
Well, this is Carlene, and I felt that, that you would acknowledge by saying, I know you've got so much going on, Alex, with changing your school hat with your family hat, and I can see that would be overwhelming and so hard. So just to try to get that empathy going, that you're acknowledging that he's got these issues and there's good reason to have it.
Yeah. Right, really trying to express an understanding of the experience and connecting the experience to their feelings, right? I think is really important about that. Thank you. And then when it comes to breathing, how do you all feel like it usually goes when, right, a mentee has shared something difficult? Do you find breathing easy to do, or what could make it easier when you're kind of in these tough conversations? Again, feel free to just come off mute, write in the chat.
Hi, this is Andrew. Typically when I have like a tough conversation where I basically see someone, like distressed, I try my best to, like, even before we get into the conversation, just stop to center ourselves. Like taking deep breaths in and out just before we even get into the conversation, because you kind of see sometimes when you just jump straight into it, either your thoughts can get a little lost or you kind of become more distracted when it becomes more withdrawn situation. So kind of being able to, breathe and center yourself with some deep breaths, like, I think deep breath in, hold it for a little bit, deep breath out, etc. And just, kind of going forward and just as we send ourselves forward and just go with the conversation afterwards, you'd be more, I think, comfortable and comforting for that person, just knowing that you also want them to feel kind of better or more safe in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And right, this comfortability, right, is that especially if you're with someone and you're uncomfortable, they're likely to feel that and take that on as well, especially if they're in kind of a sensitive situation. And I'm just adding some examples kind of on the screen of what you can do. And right, when it comes to breathing as well, for anybody who's practiced meditation or of the like, breathing is also a skill, right? To be able to really do it effectively in moments of stress and things like that. This is another thing that you can practice, which I hope, feels encouraging. And then you all have lots of thoughts about being curious, and I'll just read. And again, I'll make sure you get a copy of this when I follow up. Right, maybe a little bit more specifics. Are there specific subjects you're struggling in? How is he dealing with stress? I think is a great question, right? So like you're feeling the stress. We know that stress leads to action for those of us who have experienced stress, which is a universal experience, right? So how are you currently dealing with it, right? When we think about helping young people cope. Yeah. Right. And just checking for understanding, right? Is this a truly academic misunderstanding or is this something else? And things like that. Yes. Well, thank you so much for your participation. We're getting there. We're starting to practice. And again, this is something we can continue to do as we come to know new young people, right? And new situations that we can continue to practice on this skill. We're going to watch a quick video about empathy. This is from Brene Brown, who is another researcher in the field. Again, you'll have access to the link in this video, but I'm going to play it for you now.
Denver, Maui, how are you traveling so much?
Points on everything, girl. With this.
Oh, turning.
So what is empathy and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Yes. She does such a good job of hitting all the points that we kind of talked about, right? Perspective taking, taking on or connecting with someone's feelings about it, which I loved how she said we do that by connecting with when we had that feeling, right? So when I say that we build empathy by getting to know folks whose experiences are different than us, that might happen, right, when our mentee is going through something that we've never gone through. But by considering it and learning more about it and continuing to be curious about our young person, that we can really practice empathy. But she made a lot of great points. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but a question I'd like to ask here is, right, can you describe a time where somebody practiced empathy with you really well? Or maybe you can think of a time where somebody was practicing sympathy with you instead of empathy and how that felt. So yeah, you can let me know in the chat or come off mute. Can you describe a time someone practiced empathy with you really well? What did they do? Or can you describe a time somebody was practicing sympathy with you instead of empathy? I doubt we have no examples from you all. So again, thinking about a time somebody practiced empathy with you really well. Again, now that we kind of saw it modeled in the video, or maybe a time where somebody was practicing sympathy with you instead.
I have one.
Yeah, please.
So I was going through a really rough time in my season in my life, and a friend, I was talking to a friend, and they actually set me down and was like, Sandy, I really understand what you're going through. I've been there before, and can I give you a little advice on how to get out of this season of your life? And they gave me like different strategies of how they approach the situation. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think there's a few things that I want to point out about the context of that situation, right? Well, one, it was a friend, right? So it was probably, of course, very comforting to hear that they had been through that experience. And she asked you if you wanted advice, which I think is also something that we don't do enough with young people, is ask if they even want our advice, right? But also because you had an established friendship, you were likely more open to really hearing it, right? And again, that's when I think about the rapport building we need to do in relationships with young people. If they don't know us very well, if they don't feel like we're invested in them, if they don't feel a strong relationship with us, why should they take our advice? If we've not put in the time to build a relationship with them that stands on its own. And a friendship, or however you might want to call it, it can be really powerful when it comes to practicing empathy and things like that. I want you to continue to kind of think about that, who your empathy models might be and what they, and particularly what actions they take, because often it's something we feel, we've not critically thought about what exactly they're doing. But again, we're reviewing some of those strategies here. So we're going to talk about adaptability real quick. I think she hit a lot of it in the video. So, right, communicating or showing our mentee that we understand by being responsive, which again, I saw a lot in your responses to the ABC scenario. And being adaptable, adjusting our approach, whether that is the attitude or points of view that we brought to the situation, or their behavior, our behavior, right? So considering, right, do I need to adjust where I'm coming from, how I'm communicating, considering what my young person is feeling, what they shared with me, where they are at right now. We all have good days and bad days, right? We should respond accordingly. And then for those of us who supervise mentors, right, we want to think about all the expectations that new mentors come into relationships with and encourage them to kind of, right, let those go, right? There's a great quote from the chapter that's from a new mentor who said, I might have some expectations, but I can't really say it will happen like I want. So I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen and kind of adapt to what I need to for my mentee. Right. Best laid plans, best hopes. We can hope how something is going to go. But the reality is the most unpredictable thing in the world, right, is young people because they're growing and changing and they're so dynamic as they are growing and changing and developing their identities over time. So our ability to be adaptable is really, really important, particularly as it relates to relationship building and empathy. So I think you guys have described a little bit about your adaptability. So I want to move on so we make sure that we have time into talking specifically about support. So hold on one second. I'm on the wrong slide. All right, what about emotional support? So again, emotional support is right along with empathy, and I'm going to talk to you about support and care through the developmental relationship framework. So the developmental relationship framework is an evidence-based research-backed framework from Search Institute, who has tons of leading research in the field that suggests that practicing these 5 elements over here on the left in relationships makes ensures that more positive outcomes for the young person, for really effective relationship. These 5 elements: express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, expand possibilities. We are going to talk about expressing care and providing support, as those are most closely linked to our topic today. If you are interested in a full training about the developmental relationship framework, please let us know in the training survey because we'd love to host one for you. It's a really yummy topic, right? There's lots to talk about. But again, I want us to talk about expressing care and providing support and how we can actually do that, right? Again, what are the actionable steps that we can take and practices we can do to provide support and show that we care. So from the point of view of the young person expressing care, show me that you like me and want the best for me. So here is how you can do it from the perspective of a young person. Can I have somebody read the 5 bullets under express care?
Express care. Be present. Pay attention when you are with me. Be warm. Let me know that you're with me and express feelings toward me. Invest. Commit time to doing things for and with. Show interest. Make it a problem to understand who I am and what I care. Be dependable. Be someone I can count on and trust.
Yeah, thank you. So again, I think we can see a lot of these actions that we can take in what we've already talked about, right? Make it a priority to understand who I am, perspective taking, being curious, and not just who I am, but what I care about, and being curious to continue to learn about those things, even outside of a relationship, right? My mentor or my mentee, right, loves this kind of movie, this kind of book, this thing in their community. How can I continue to make it a priority to learn and understand, right? So some actionable, you can do these things right now, right? To take to your relationship when it comes to expressing care. Provide support, another element, so help me complete tasks and achieve goals. So encourage, praise my efforts and achievements, guide, provide practical assistance and feedback to help me learn, model, be an example I can learn from and admire, an advocate, stand up for me when I need it. So as we think about expressing care, providing support, I want you all to think about who comes to mind when you think about who expressed care for you and who provided support for you when you were growing up. And not just the folks who did it, but how they did it. What action did they take? How did you understand that they cared for you? How did you understand that they supported you? What were they doing that made you feel that way? Because there's a quote that folks always remember how you made them feel, which I think we do, right? But how did they do it? What were the actions that they were taking? So I'm going to ask you to go to the poll, which you can do at slido.com, but it should also be open in WebEx if you can find it. But right, what did those folks do? The people who expressed care, supported you, what were they doing when you were a young person? And how did they do it? What were the actions they were taking? Because we know how, we can assume how it made us feel, right? That we were cared for, that we were supported. But what and how did they do it? And thanks, Catherine. I just saw your note. And for those of us who had some negative relationships, right? For the folks who, the adults who were supporting us, what did they do that was different than those folks that we had those negative relationships with? So I came to my grandmother. She always seemed interested in everything I told her. And she came to every event I invited her to. Ooh, that is so good. Again, common interest, whether it was that she was genuinely interested and it was her interest too, right? Showing that interest and making that purposeful point of connection can be so powerful because it can feel isolated as a young person, as an adult, to have interests that it feels like no one else is, again, the words on our previous slide, invested in getting to know or things like that. That can be really, really powerful for young people. And then showing up, again, that investment of time. Another grandmother, Kylie, she always let me rattle on and on, right? Being able to listen and really listening. Quote, home I watch like TV and I was an adult, yeah. And when I think about letting me rattle on and on, I was I was working at a program. I was matching a girl with a new mentor, and it was the first day meeting. And this girl, I mean, she talked for a whole hour. She talked the whole time. And she wasn't waiting, but but the thing was, that was her opportunity to do it. There was an adult who would really listen and let her yap on for an hour. And they ended up having a long and great, a deep relationship because the mentor would listen, right? The teacher doesn't have time to listen to you talk for an hour, likely, right? Or other folks as well. So thinking about the things that we can do in our role as mentor that other adults can't necessarily do for that young person. So Rodney named a few people, which I love. I'm always happy to hear that many folks have more than one person spending time and giving me experiences I would not normally have. Yes, so good, which actually relates to another element of the framework, which is expanding possibilities, right? Showing young people that there's a big world out there and that we're invested in them learning about it and knowing more, right? And expanding their possibilities and what the world and their life can be and have. And there's a few more people typing, so I will let them do that. But again, as we think about kind of who our role models are, in doing this, we can think about what actions that we can take, that we can emulate, that we can put our own spin on, and how we can apply that to our mentor-mentee relationships. Because again, these elements can really be applied to any relationship, but as we think of mentor to mentee, we wanted to apply it for our context. The same to my best friend, we used to go for walks and talk about what's on our minds. Yeah, love that. So a ritual of it, an expectation, right? When we go on these walks, I'll be able to share and that my friend will listen. Consistency is really important when building rapport with young people, right? The showing up that young people can predict how you will act and what you will be like and how you're going to listen and things like that. So having rituals like that and things you do every time and consistency can be really important for relationship building, particularly early in a relationship. And we're about to talk about relationship timelines on our next slide. I see one more person typing, so we'll wait for you. I want to hear. Oh, Catherine.
So
I
I was having technical difficulties, so I'm just going to raise my hand. And I think everyone kind of touched on it about, just being from a small town and growing up around at least my dad's side of the family. It literally took a village, so with my brother and I just being in all these activities and showing up, or if I'm, there was one of us that was sick, it was okay to have like a list of people at the front office, like grandpa, aunt, uncle, all those folks that would be able to come to our rescue while our parents worked, or whoever had the flexibility just to show up. And growing up and even now, I mean, I still have those same personal relationships, with those family members because they were present for my parents and my brother and I.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate a personal story. And Andrew has shared his story as well about his research mentor in high school. So again, I'll ensure that you all get these stories so we can share them out. But I want to kind of get into what I was talking about relationship timelines and where you are in a relationship. So what we have here is the 4 kinds of stages of mentoring relationships. So the beginning and building of a relationship, again, we're building that rapport, we're getting to know each other. The second stage, which we kind of call the testing and challenging, right? Where a young person is kind of putting you to the test. And is this person going to be around? Where they're kind of laying the groundwork for, am I going to trust this person or not? And then what we call the real mentoring, which is the largest portion of the relationship, where it's like you have an established rapport, you know each other, you're continuing to learn and grow with each other. And then our final stage, which is transitions, whether that's the end of a relationship, moving to a new program, a young person is becoming an adult, and things like that. So I wanted to highlight here again, express care and providing support. And the way this kind of graph works is that this colored section is when it's appropriate to take these actions that express the element, right? So when we look at express care from the beginning, at the very beginning of a relationship, we should be dependable. I talked about being consistent and listening. And a lot of you talked about folks who were just listening to you, right? Those are things that we can act on early in a relationship and make sense for how much we know each other, right? And even the other ones as well, right? Believing in them, being warm, being encouraging. When we say we don't mean to say like you can't believe in them from the beginning. You might, right? But if it's the first day I'm meeting someone and I tell this young person, oh, I believe in you, you're going to graduate college, you're going to do this and the other. It could seem disingenuous, right? They don't really know them and they don't really know you, right? Some young people might be open to it, but other young people might not. And that does kind of make sense in the timing of the relationship. But expressing care is something we can do really meaningfully from the very beginning when we're building our relationships. When it comes to providing support, again, navigating, empowering, advocating, and setting boundaries, this word makes a little bit more sense when the relationship is a bit more established and when we're in kind of stage 2 going into stage 3, right? And again, it's because we have the context of building a relationship, having rapport, that we can get into this kind of deeper support. And a lot of that has to do with being consistent in expressing care and being empathetic. So I hope that was helpful. I want to get into now pitfalls, things that we want to avoid in doing this work and in this kind of practicing empathy and support with our young people. So this idea, and I hope I've kind of made this point already, assuming that similar means same, right? So again, I'm with a young person who we're from the same neighborhood, we went to the same school, we speak the same language, we have the same kind of family structure, we have 2 sisters or whatever and things like that. They could be similar, but a young person can still be having a unique experience, and we need to make space for us to be curious about how their experience is unique to them because of them. They are all those things now, which we have not been, right? We are not young people now. So being mindful that because our brains are always looking for similar and same as it comes to practicing empathy, that we are also making room for what's different about each other, but acknowledging and still working to make connections even if there are differences. Thinking you quote unquote know best, right? Often it might feel like this is true, right? It's why often in the history of mentoring, why mentors were matched with mentees, and also for those of us who are parents or are teachers, right? It's assumed that we quote unquote knows best. And this is what we call trying to fight the righting reflex, that we want to tell them what's right and how to do it and this, that, and the other. But doing that can build tension in a relationship because a young person may feel judged and not understood and not like you're practicing empathy. So this is where we can practice that kind of ABC, right? Acknowledging them, breathing, slowing down a little bit, being more curious before you give advice or offer advice, pausing, slowing down, being a little bit more adaptable to listening and learning more about your mentee, because we need to make sure that your mentee is even open to receiving help. And then blaming the parents and guardians, which I feel like we're kind of in this cycle right now where when I think about my time at a program, right, parents blame teachers, teachers blame parents blame the after-school program blames the parents and the teachers, right? It is hard because it is hard right now for young people to be young people and grow successfully. So it often feels easy to blame, a young person's family and where they are coming from. And this is where we saw many slides ago, we talked about perspective taking for a young person's family and doing that relationship building, in that we are trying to understand what is their experience, what are the potential obstacles that this family is facing that can make it easy for me to blame the young person's challenging on, right? They may prioritize things differently than us. They may have a different culture than us. Again, they are in a different situation than us. So we want to extend our efforts of empathy to our mentees' families by striving to see things from their perspective, do that perspective taking, and to help us to be more open to seeing and understanding the family's situation, and also to understanding their strengths and resilience. If we're not curious about who they are and where they come from, we're going to miss what is great about this family and what their strengths and resilience on that we can kind of build on as it relates to them facing potential challenges. And then drowning in emotions, right? And this can be, you've likely heard of compassion fatigue. This can be hard. It is hard to be more open, right? We're being vulnerable, to be more fully understanding of someone else's experience. If we're too consumed by their emotional reaction, it doesn't really make space for us to really practice empathy and do be responsive, right? So this is, again, we're a pause, we're taking a breath, and things can be really impactful. And you may say, oh, this is never me, this has never happened to me, I can hang, but you just never know one day what a young person might tell you. And this is why having these skills to fall back on when we might hear something that is upsetting, that right, when we're deep in a relationship, a young person may feel comfortable enough to reveal something that might be hard to hear. So having these skills and kind of muscles built up in advance will help us get through those tougher moments. And of course, expecting to be perfectly good at it, right? And knowing exactly what we're doing. That is always our hope. We want to strive and do our best, but we want to be mindful of when we miss the mark and being honest with young people when we've made mistakes. Young people appreciate when adults acknowledge that they are fallible, that they can make mistakes, because it also gives the young person permission to make mistakes. And guess what? Young people are going to make mistakes, right? That is the matter of being a young person. So when we miss the mark, acknowledge it with our young person and be mindful of communicating through it and using empathy to get through it, right? The last concept that I want to get through quickly is this idea of unconditional positive regard. And we're going to watch part of this video to get through the concept.
And tomorrow you aren't the same person. If you're tired of what today you is doing, get an accounting fundamentals certificate from WGU School of Business and get a whole new tomorrow you in just 6 months. Enroll today at WGU.
Unconditional positive regard is a concept in humanistic psychology that refers to accepting and supporting another person without any conditions or judgments. This approach is fundamental in creating a safe and nurturing environment where individuals can explore and develop their true selves. The term unconditional positive regard was introduced by the influential psychologist Carl Rogers in the mid-20th century. Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, emphasized the importance of this concept in therapeutic settings. He believed that for individuals to grow and self-actualize, they need to feel valued and accepted without conditions. There are 5 main characteristics of unconditional positive regard. The first characteristic is acceptance without judgment. This means embracing the person as they are without evaluating or judging their behavior or feelings. This characteristic is about recognizing the intrinsic worth of the individual regardless of their actions or thoughts. The second characteristic is consistent support. This involves providing continuous support regardless of the individual's actions, emotions, or thoughts. This unwavering support helps create a stable environment where the individual feels secure and valued. The third characteristic is empathy. This involves demonstrating a deep understanding and sharing the feelings of another without judgment. Empathy involves putting oneself in another's shoes and experiencing their emotions from their perspective, which fosters a deeper connection and understanding. The fourth characteristic is non-conditional care. This refers to offering care and support that does not depend on any conditions or prerequisites. This type of care is given freely and unconditionally, reinforcing the individual's sense of worth and security. The fifth characteristic is encouragement of authenticity. This is about encouraging the person to express their true self without fear of rejection or disapproval. This characteristic supports individuals in being genuine and authentic, which is essential for personal growth and self-acceptance. Here are 2 examples of unconditional positive regard.
I'm going to stop us there for time, but this concept is so wide, right? It's really all encompassing of everything we've talked about, empathy and beyond today as it relates to relationships with young people. We're talking about literally not having conditions to being in the relationship. We're invested in meeting with these young people no matter what. And that when we practice empathy and some of the other aspects of unconditional positive regard, this young person's know they can be who they really are and who they're meant to be, that they can come to you for help, and that you won't abandon them if they tell you something that they made a mistake, right? Or that they might tell you something that might change how you view them or your expectation of them. It is a really, really wonderful thing to be able to apply in a mentor-mentee relationship. And I think when we think about who has unconditional positive regard for us, it might feel like it's actually not that many people, especially for young people too. So being mindful, I encourage you, pardon me, to explore this more in the chapter and this concept in general, because it really can be a whole other training. But I wanted to introduce it here. So because we are at the end of our time, I'm going to take us right to our end and kind of our summary. You'll see everything else in when you get the slides. Right, empathy is being open to imagining another person's experiences from their point of view and still striving to find points of connection. When someone is empathic with us, it allows us to feel comfortable and even safe enough to be open to accepting help from them. And of course, the capacity for empathy is a skill that we can grow through learning and practice. There is a great recommended reading list in the book that in this chapter that includes this book, which I have read and vetted. Again, if you're learning about other people's experiences, this is an amazing story that I would encourage you to read. There are other chapters that are directly related to kind of this foundational one, so that I would encourage you to explore. And if you're interested in a training on any of these topics, please let us know in the survey that is coming your way. So I want to thank you for being here. We are at the end of our time. If you scan the QR code, it will take you to the training evaluation, but you should also find one in your email in the next few minutes. But I appreciate you all being here. These trainings and our trainings for the next few months are part of the Y and Big Brother Big Sisters Healing Centered Art cohort. So if you are interested in being a part of the cohort and for this training counting towards your cohort kind of credits, there's 5 parts of the cohort. Our trainings are 2 of them. Please email me so I can get you registered to be part of the larger cohort, which will get its own unique Credly badge. If you're here just for today's training, thank you for being here. You will get a badge that says that you were here for Becoming a Better Mentor, providing emotional support and empathy. So thank you all for being here. I will make sure that you have everything in your email by March 14th. And again, I don't take for granted the joining on an evening and being active in this topic. So I appreciate you all, and I look forward to seeing you again soon at another training. So yeah, I hope to see you soon.